What's up? How you doing,
How
Steve?
goes?
I'm waking up. Got a coffee in my body. I'm good to go. There's we can complain about not having any primetime games, but I'm okay with it because that turnaround from a road Monday night game to this is tough.
Yeah, Monday night much different as a spectator compared to having to be someone that covers it. It's a long day that leads into another day usually where you don't have off kind of thing right
On a
after.
short week, right? Like it's not only just a weird day, late night coming in. It's like all of a sudden it's already Tuesday. Like where'd the week go? But so we'll get into it. That's why the timing of this podcast is going to be tough, and we can get into this a little bit more once we actually start the show. But now that I'm on the sideline traveling, the post game is not going to happen after these late nights. So those Thursday night matchups, you're going to have to wait till the next day. I think that we only have one of them, or one Monday night game. So,
What time did you finally get in?
We landed around 1 a.m., which was the scheduled time. So we were pretty much on time locally. But yeah, I mean, it's nice. They kick off at 6:20, and 6 hours later, 7 hours later, I'm home, from Carolina. So that's a nice little perk. But it does make it so, like, if I was going to a hotel room, I would get all my work done. Instead, I get home at 1 a.m. and I'm like, I got all this work to do. So I guess I'll do it. And then I go to sleep at like 3 a.m. And so that's why I look like I'm dying. But
I'll take the balance of coming home, though. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like you save an entire day. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, like, I'm sure a lot of the reporters who covered that game are traveling today. They're probably not even home yet.
I actually saw a horror story from one of our media members, and John Hendricks was having a rough go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just flying commercially is tough. That's why, one of the things that makes it such a pain, But hey, so I'll stop bragging. Do you want to get this thing started? Looks like we got a decent number of people in here now.
Sure.
All right.
Do you have to hit anything or no?
Nah, go for it.
Welcome inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak, a 2-0 edition. Man, the NFC South too, the Saints needing to keep up with a division that suddenly looks pretty impressive through the first 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, there might be some imposters in that bunch. 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 0-2. But, all offseason I heard about how the NFC South was a dumpster fire. And so far, the NFC South is 4-0 against non-NFC South teams. The only 2 losses in the division are from the Panthers to other NFC South teams. So, hey, I was told that none of these teams were going to win 8 games this year. So, you're already a quarter of the way there 2 weeks into the season. Teams like the Bengals and the Chargers are 0-2. And the Bengals look like they're in serious trouble.
I thought the
with
Bucs
Joe Burrow
for Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, they're not tanking for Caleb, but I thought the Giants might be at halftime against the Cardinals down 20-0. They figure it out. They come back and win. I think the Cardinals might be doing a little tank job there, but we'll find out in the next few weeks. But yeah, the Bucs 2-0. Like even with the teams they've played, which obviously have not been remarkable. The Vikings are 0-2. The Bears are really disappointing with Justin Fields, who looks like he's completely gone backwards. But that division, and yes, so the Saints 2-0. It's the first time they have started 2-0 in a decade. Think about that. That's crazy.
I'm going to date myself. I was a senior in high school.
Yeah. I mean, in 2013.
No, 93.
No.
Oh, I'm thinking about the defense.
What
Sorry.
are you talking about?
I'm thinking about the defense and the 20 points. Sorry.
Yeah, you might not realize this. Steve's just a really old, like 28-year-old kid.
I got different stats going through the head. It was the wrong one.
Yeah, 2013, not 1993. But
right.
Yeah, I think the stat you're referring to is they've held opponents to 20 points or under.
There you go.
For 10 straight games, which is the record going back to the Dome Patrol in 1993. But all right, let's just tell you what we're going to do in this podcast. Obviously, it's kind of the post-game podcast, even though we're a day late. That's what it's going to be for these later road games, or we can't get that live chat after the game. But so we're going to go through my 3 up, 3 down, which is again going to be mostly like 6 up and 4 down. But we'll get through that. That's going to be the first segment is the up. Second segment is the down. And the final segment, we're going to get into the mailbag. So if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to get your comments in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can in the back end of this program. So like get them in there now. I'll star them and we'll come back to them and we'll get those questions answered. But, first things first, this team, and you look at this team and like what's different about it, right? The offense is still struggling. The offensive line is still trying to figure out its protection issues that we saw last year. Trevor Penning, I think, improved, but he's still got a ways to go. The interior offensive line looks like it's really struggling, but somehow this team is 2-0, right? Somehow you found a way to get there. And I think, when you look at this team, to me, the biggest difference is kind of intangible, but when you watch these games, you can see it, because last year it felt like all we were talking about after every game was, oh man, if they only had made this catch, if they only had not had this dumb play in this big moment, if only Mark Ingram had run 2 yards further downfield, right? If only you didn't have 3 guys have balls bounce off their helmets in big moments that could have changed the game. And this year, it seems like, you might have some mistakes. Obviously, the Derek Carr interceptions in both the first halves of these games were both ugly, and he takes it on the chin for those. I think this time he said, I was an idiot. I read it wrong. I didn't, it was trying to make a hero throw. But when it comes down to it, when the game gets tight and you need the offense to go make a play, they've done it both weeks. They've found ways to win rather than finding ways to lose. And I asked Dennis Allen about that, and I thought his answer was pretty good. Games, you've had the offense kind of go out and have that kind of killer instinct late in the game, not just win a game, but close the game.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just awesome how we were able to do that in 2 weeks in a row. Obviously, I don't feel like we should have let it get to that point. And look, I thought our offense, they kicked the field goal there, in the was the third or fourth quarter, and the offense responds right back and goes down with a score of their own. So that's kind of the way this team's built, and there's some ebb and flow to the game. And when defensively, when the defense needs picked up, the offense has been there to take over, and certainly the defense has done its part to help the offense.
They didn't even let me finish my question. And so, as a defensive play caller, when you have an offense that's going to go out there and not only execute, but execute in a way that's going to slam the door on a game. Both of these games, the offense found a way to make it so the defense didn't even have to go back on the field with any real pressure. In week 1, they salted away the clock. The Titans never even got the ball back in a 1-point game. This week, the Panthers got the ball back. Instead of being down 1 score, they were down 3. They were down 3 when the Saints got the ball back. Then they handed back with about 2 minutes left with a 10-point lead. Even with the defense kind of getting soft and allowing that first touchdown of the season, it was over. I mean, it was an onside kick, which is a very low percentage play, and the Saints recovered it. And so the offense made sure the defense never really had to sweat. And that is, something I just don't think we have seen from this Saints team in a couple of years now.
Dennis had to be stewing about giving up that touchdown at the end of the game. I mean, yeah, they had really this defense has looked damn impressive to start the year. I know they're not facing any juggernaut kind of offenses right off the bat, but what they've been doing is impressive. The stat now of, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning there, holding teams to under 20 points nowadays, that just doesn't happen very often in today's NFL.
10 consecutive games that they've done it. And it should have been 10. I mean, like that touchdown at the end, it was just, the defense kind of, I felt like they got a little complacent. But yeah, I mean, this defense is in midseason form, and you've seen some mistakes here or there, but the pass rush erases so much of that. Derek Carr's interception, the pass rush was able to make it a non-factor because Carl Grandis had forced that fumble. But no, so, you talk about the offense. One of the reasons this game felt a lot easier than it was in the second half was, Jamal Williams went down. This is my first stock up player that I'll mention. Jamal Williams goes down. The only tailback specifically, you have on the active roster is Tony Jones Jr., a guy who has been in the league for 4 years, has been on 3 different rosters. He got signed off the Saints practice squad by the Seahawks last year. He spent the offseason with the Broncos, got cut, and the Saints brought him back. And they had that much confidence in him that they were willing to have him be a practice squad elevation, knowing Kendre Miller was not going to be active. And he was the only other guy. And Jamal Williams went out with that hamstring injury. It didn't look good. I would be very surprised to see him back this week. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of Tony Jones. And while he didn't have a huge day, right, it was tough sledding. The Panthers defensive line is very good. I think he had 12 carries for 34 yards. Those 2 touchdown runs, you take them for granted, these short touchdown runs. But, what if you don't get in on first down, things get a lot more complicated. If you lose 2-3 yards on that first down and suddenly you have to figure something out, you end up kicking a field goal. That's a huge play for the defense. And not only did he score those touchdowns, he got it done on first down both times. Those were his first 2 career touchdowns. He says he kept both balls. One was for his wife. They got married recently. She's pregnant, so she wasn't there. But her name is Rebecca. She's getting that first ball. That second one was for him. He's keeping that one too. He kept both balls. And it's like we watched Tony come up as a UDFA, fight his way onto the roster, get some opportunities, but not really. Eventually ended up on the practice squad and didn't really get any chances out in Seattle, didn't get a chance out in Denver, even though he's kind of looked solid everywhere he's been. So for me, it's like my stock is up on him in general, just in terms of he was called upon and delivered, but more so than that, it's just good for him. Like that's an awesome thing for him after 4 years of just toiling in the NFL, just waiting for a chance. He got his chance and he delivered. I thought that was really cool.
I just hope there's no scenario now in some weird kind of way we end up losing him like what happened with Latavius Murray last year. I guess the Saints ended up putting Murray back on the practice squad.
Well, Murray was always on the practice squad.
But after that game in London.
Yes. So here's the thing. I was asked by one person why the Saints don't just sign somebody to that open roster spot. They have an open roster spot. Well, one of the reasons you don't do that is Alvin's coming back next week. After the week 3 game, he gets added back to the roster, and so that fills that spot. So if you sign Tony, for example, to the active roster right now, you would have to cut him or somebody else. And I imagine it would be him because you're going to end up with Jamal Williams, Kendre Miller, Tony Jones Jr., and a fullback. There's just too many bodies. You have to lose one. And so if you were to do that, he would be exposed to waivers because he is not technically a vested veteran yet. And then if someone were to claim him, he would have to go there. Now, the difference when you poach someone off the practice squad is they have to agree to that deal. It's not waivers where you get claimed and you have to show up. So to me, I think that the difference is if someone came in and said, we want to sign you off the practice squad, they would sign Tony Jones to the active roster. Right now, it just doesn't make sense to do that because you would end up having to cut him. And I also think, from what Tony said, he wants to be here. Like, there's a reason that he came back. Joel Thomas called him up, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I'm coming back. I don't care if I'm on the practice squad. I don't care if I'm on the 53. He likes it here. This was his home for, 2-3 years. So I don't think that, if he would got a call by somebody else that he would turn it down. He would turn down the Saints. Like if the Browns called him up and like, oh, you want to be our 4th string running back? I don't think that would be enough to sway him. So I don't think you lose him. But there's a chance. I mean, he did look good. So there's obviously a chance. And if he finds a better opportunity, because that's what it was with Latavius. It wasn't about whether the Saints wanted to sign him or not. It was he saw more opportunity with the Broncos than he did backing up Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara here. So, I mean, that's kind of the,
Yeah. And I mean, right now, the Saints are definitely hurting because we don't know what's, like you mentioned with Jamal Williams. I don't really see him being back in time for this week. Who knows what's up with Miller time still? The Rook still
sounds like he's going to be ready next week. So we'll see.
I definitely hope so. And then after obviously the pack in week 3, we finally get Alvin back. So I guess things are looking at least It looks a little more positive, you could say right there at running back, but right now it seems very dark.
You got to get through one more week, however you can. Now, do you sign a veteran? I don't think you do. I think because you would end up having to, coach him up. Maybe Darrell Williams is still around. You could bring him back. Maybe call up Jordan Mims. He's been here for a couple weeks, just kind of hanging out. Maybe Kirk Merritt finally gets a chance. But it's definitely going to be a question because these are a lot of unproven guys, right? Like right now, Tony Jones Jr. is your, most veteran player at that position. And obviously you're going to see a big role for Taysom Hill too, which is what you saw in this game. But yeah, that's the big question. But there is reinforcements on the way. That's the thing. It's like if you're not in the situation the Browns are, where you're not getting Nick Chubb back, you got to find something. Which, man, that injury was brutal. But yeah, the Saints, they got to figure something out. And I think they will. I think you're going to end up seeing a lot of Tony Jones because I think he endeared himself to the Saints in a lot of ways this week.
And I would imagine even if, Kendra Miller's able to come back this week, how much involvement, would he really have, or do they trust him with, right off the bat?
No, it's a good question, right? And that's why having Jamal was really helpful. And I watched him on the sideline. He was in the injury tent for a while. And that's not a great sign. He came out, tested that leg. He did like a little sprint down the sideline. Immediately, just turned around, shook his head, walked back in the tent. Did not look happy. So I don't think he tore anything. I think if you had torn something, it would be a little more obvious. They wouldn't have even given you that opportunity to potentially, run through it. But yeah, strain. Just strain of some kind. Yeah. And hamstrings are tough to begin with. So, even if he does make a really fast turnaround and come back, you have to plan for him not to be there, right? Like you can't plan on him being available. So, but let's move on. The next guy that I have as my stock up is Chris Olave. We talked all offseason about, okay, can he get better in contested catches? He got a little stronger. He bulked up a little bit, and that catch down the sideline, I think it was for 42 yards. That's like the exact play he didn't make last year. He made a lot of really nice catches. He got open a lot. He's a great route runner.
He almost gave me a heart attack, though.
Right. Yeah. Well, we could talk about that. But, there was just those moments where it was like, oh, Chris Olave had a chance to go up and make a spectacular catch, change this game right now. And last year he didn't do it. Last year it ended up on the ground, right? Like he didn't complete the process of the catch. It ended up, and this year that's the type of play he's able to make. And so I think from a progression standpoint, you have to be incredibly happy with how he has come. But yes, as you mentioned, there was that little, out of body experience there for a second.
I'm like screaming at the television, and Bobby's like, I'm watching it in the sports office with Bobby, and he's like, I think he was down. He's all right. And then I was like, I don't think he was touched.
At best, it was close.
Right. And then he's, spins the ball, and then luckily the Panther defender goes after the ball, and it kind of squirts out of bounds.
Well, thankfully he didn't spin the ball, because if he spun the ball, it would have stayed where it was. He spiked it, which is what allowed it to get out of bounds. But yeah, he may have been touched. I never really got a good look at it because he didn't have to, because it was never really a question. But that was way too close. Like you'll see guys get touched obviously and still pop up and run because they just weren't sure. Yeah. That was way too close to do what he did. And if that play ended with a spike and a fumble, a turnover, man, that would have been, one of those examples of, you're finding a way to lose again, huh? But thankfully it didn't burn them. They got lucky. But either way, it was such an incredible catch that I'm willing to look past that.
Yes, I agree. Like you mentioned before, this year we're seeing already, luckily, the positive momentum, the arrow, the outcome ends up being for the Saints, because
the ball's bouncing the right way.
There you go. Right. Because last year that did not happen at all. And I'll definitely take that kind of luck, or whatever you want to call it right now, because the ball is bouncing their way currently.
I agree. So let's get through a couple more of these. The defensive line. Last week I gave it to the secondary because I couldn't single anyone out. This week I give it to the defensive line because, it seems like everyone is making a play every week. Carl Granderson had a sack. Nathan Shepard, I thought, had a fantastic game.
Absolutely.
Carl Granderson forced that fumble. Cam Jordan got a sack fumble, and it got negated by a really dumb penalty by Paulson Adebo. But I still give Cam credit for that. It's not his fault. Brian Brzee recovered it. They're just making plays, and they're making life miserable on Bryce Young. And, we talked prior to the game about how I thought the game plan going in was going to be you stuff the run, you stop the run, and you rush with 4, and you force Bryce Young to beat you with his arm. And that's what Dennis Allen said after the game. That was the plan, and he was not able to do it. And, the defensive line, if you knew the secondary was going to be able to cover, but even the best secondary in the world, if the guy has all day to sit back there and throw and pick you apart, he's going to pick you apart. You can only cover for so long. But in when you have the pass rush and you can generate pressure with 4 guys and you can drop 7 into coverage, you got to really work to find holes. And Bryce Young was unable to do it. And so, that defensive line, that was one of my big questions going into camp. Is that rebuilt defensive line going to be able to get the job done? And so far, through 2 weeks, man, they look better than able to get the job done. They look like they're a weapon.
Yeah, going into the season, even with the additions, you were like, is it an upgrade from last year? I'm not even sure right now. We're going to have to wait and see. And yeah, it's definitely looking legit right now up front. And I agree totally with the call with Nathan Shepard. Really impressive, just being a wrecking ball out there. Tackles for loss, getting hits on the quarterback. You love to see that kind of pressure from the middle because that was not present last year. And man, Carl Granderson, we can't keep saying enough of him, which is one of those training camp, I guess, things we'd see at practice, writing in our notes or whatever. And at least that wasn't a mirage. That was really, it wasn't translated so far into the regular season right now.
Makes me feel a little better about Trevor Penning.
Right.
Because at least no other left tackle has been able to really stop Carl Granderson either. And again, we talked about the offensive line, and then they're going to be in my 3 down segment. But I thought, relatively speaking, I thought Trevor actually did take a decent step forward today. He still got beat a couple times. He's still learning. There's going to be moments. But I thought he took a step forward. He's not in my 3 up. But I think when I go through the film, which I haven't got a chance to yet, obviously, because it's, we're not even 24 hours removed from the game. I think I think there's going to be a lot more positive things we can spot on the tape than we did a week ago. And so that's all you can hope for with a guy like that. Let's move on to the honorable mentions. The first one, again, the one of these weeks, the offense is not going to have this many big plays that I can fit him into the 3 up, but he's in the honorable mention again. It's Rashid Shaheed, the closer, the man in the big moments. And last week he ran by a Titans defender, and it was like, yeah, okay, he just didn't expect him to run a go. This week he ran by Dante Jackson on a double move. Dante Jackson, one of the fastest corner, maybe the fastest corner in the NFL. Like, we know him from LSU. He's an Olympic class sprinter. He's that good. And Rashid just ran by him, and Derek Carr kind of talked about that a little bit. So here's that.
I wasn't Mike, so unless he was or somebody around us, nobody was Mike. Yeah, they'd be hiding microphones everywhere. We talked about some things, but I don't think there'll be any videos.
What would you say? Was it kind of a similar type deal on that one? Was that a double move? I saw you pump on that.
Yeah, it was a double move. Yeah, they had been playing aggressive, and Pete took his time with that shot. He knew that we had a few other completions that he liked, and we were able to hit those, and then that one just presented itself, in that moment. And again, he's so fast, man. I ripped that thing, and he just tracked it down like it was nothing, And it's unbelievable football player, because y'all saw last week just the speed, right, the go route. Today he runs the double move. I've been saying he can run the routes, and he's a good receiver. But that threat to run by, especially a fast corner, one of the fastest corners in our league, he's a really good player. It says a lot about Rashid, and having that weapon is awesome for our offense and for me.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned there that I think is worth calling out is I think Pete. You kind of get this idea is like, wow, they could go deep every play. Well, no, like you want to set that play up, right? And that's what they did, and so they pulled it out in a big moment when they really needed it. And it's because they had set Dante Jackson up. They got him biting on these moves, on these initial like kind of comebacks. And then when they ran the double move, wide open. And, you know, Derek, obviously, as he mentioned, he slung that thing. And he crow hopped into it. He gunned it out there. And she just found it, you know, and that's, you know, it for a guy who came up on the practice squad last year, we keep kind of wondering when he's going to reach his ceiling. Like, what is his ceiling? I don't know what it is. It just keeps getting higher and higher. You know, he's a guy, he's caught 9 of 10 targets this year. I think in his career, he has caught 37 of 48 targets. He's got like an 85% catch rate for a guy who goes out there and makes these, he's running low percentage routes. These are deep balls, are low percentage balls. That's why you don't see a ton of them anymore, because everyone's trying to complete 70% of their passes and throw the ball close to the line of scrimmage. And meanwhile, you got Rashid having a 90% catch rate 20 yards down the field. The stock just keeps climbing for him. And I keep waiting for it to level off. It has not yet.
I mean, we have Dame time from Weber State. What are we going to get from Shaheed? Because, yeah, he really is electric with the ball. I know that's an overused term too, but man, I always felt that way. Like with Kamara, you have that chance with that when he's got that ball in his hand to make a move and just dust somebody and be gone. And you mentioned too, it's like we haven't really seen a ceiling for Shaheed yet, which is even more exciting to see how more that he gets incorporated into this offense. And I don't know, it's really tough, I guess, for return men nowadays to get anything going with the rules and how they are. But, you know, when's the last time I'm trying to think of like a kick return, but there was probably one this week that I missed. I don't even know.
He had one that got stopped short of the 25. At a certain point, you just stop returning the ball because it's not even worth it.
Yeah.
But, you know, like he's going to break one of these kicks one of these weeks, right? Like you can see it's there. It's just a matter of, you know, finding that lane. And he's going to break some long touchdowns. Like we've seen the 40-yard completions on the spots, but we have not seen the 80-yard touchdowns that I'm sure are coming. And all it's going to take, you just need that protection to hold up. And that's what's been limiting them so far. But you've seen late in the game, they've been able to figure it out. And I think that's a credit to Pete Carmichael in terms of, you know, making adjustments throughout the game and seeing what the defense is trying to do, and the offensive linemen getting more comfortable as they go. So yeah, I mean, like this offense isn't good right now. That's the thing. They're 2-0, and I would say this offense has given you C performances through 2 weeks, both weeks. I would grade it at a C. But you know, and that grade was probably a D until the fourth quarter when they came and closed it out. And that's bringing it up. But you know, that's going to get better. You know, and so you're waiting. 2 other guys we can hit. Obviously, we talked about Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is just Taysom Hill. He's that dude. I mean, you like people still out there with these terrible Taysom Hill takes. He's a guy who does everything. I think he had 83 yards on like 9 touches. He's a running back when you need a running back. He's a receiver when you need a receiver. He's a quarterback when you need a quarterback. He plays special teams. I mean, he's like the ultimate fake punt guy. If you ever need to run a fake punt, there is no reason that anyone should be like, wow, Taysom Hill is limiting them in any way. Taysom Hill is a weapon that any team would be thrilled to have. And yeah, I mean, he's just doing his thing.
I wanted Taysom, the quarterback, this game, a little change of pace, because it wasn't pretty for Derek Carr in this game. And I just thought that added Taysom element was a huge, obvious bonus for this team. He wasn't.
They never stopped it.
No, right. It was like you knew it was coming, and boom, there he just keeps doing it.
Yeah, there's always a point where it's like at a certain, you're just like, okay, I'll just keep running Taysom Hill until they prove that they have any answer. And you got 4 quarters of that game, and they never found an answer. I mean, every time he took the ball, it seemed like he was gashing 4, 5, 8 yards. You know, he never broke any huge plays.
1 negative 1 carry. I think that was it.
Yeah, and it was like a toss. It was weird.
Right.
But yeah, anytime it was like a QB power, he just got it done. He never broke any of those long plays, but it seemed like every time he touched it, it was a chunk. And for when you're struggling to run the ball the way the Saints have these first 2 weeks, that's helpful. And at halftime, I was tweeting up a storm because I was sitting there waiting for the stupid halftime show to end. Feels like Carolina, you know, that whole nonsense. That was horrible. I might cut that out. But so
stuck
people were like,
forever
how does the offense get better? And I was like, you have to run the ball. You cannot just stop running the ball because Jamal Williams is out. You have to run the ball. And I'm glad that the Saints agreed with me, because it did seem like they came out in the second half with that first drive notwithstanding, because they got pinned deep. And they stuck to the run. They gave Tony Jones opportunities. He delivered. They gave Taysom Hill opportunities. He delivered. And everything got easier after they established the run a little bit. And I just think that's going to be the key for this Saints team. Is the offensive line isn't great. They might have a bottom 10 offensive line, and that's disappointing. Hopefully they can get better. But if you want to help your offensive line be better, you cannot allow opposing teams, especially these really good pass rush teams, to tee off because they know you're passing every down. You have to keep them honest. You have to run some screens. That's something we have not seen yet, is screens in any capacity. And so, yeah, that was big to me. The last guy I want to hit, and he's a guy who feels like he's flying under the radar, which as long as he's around flying under the radar, I'm okay with it, is Mike Thomas. I thought Mike Thomas had a great game. He ended up with 7 catches for like 50-something yards. He's doing Mike Thomas things. He had that really nice catch on the sideline. He's physical. He can make catches in traffic. He's kind of been ho-hum these first 2 weeks. He hasn't had that monster game yet. But, even the pace he's at, if he plays all 17 games at this pace, he would be on track for 100 catches, 1,000 yards. And
I'll take Mike right now. I think it was 6-7 catches each game now.
6 catches week 1, 7 catches week 2. No, 5 catches. 5 catches for 61 week 1, 7 catches for like 55 week 2. And that's, to me, that's money. Absolutely. That range, like between 5 to 8 catches, between 50 to 80 yards. Obviously, you'll have games above that. But like if that's your average, then that is perfect. That's what you need, is a chain mover, because you have these weapons on the outside. You have these guys who can change games over the top. You need a guy who can go in traffic and just fight for a catch. And there's no one better at that. He had 1 catch. I think the first catch, the ball was thrown behind him. And I was like, oh man, that's an interception. And he just goes out. His hands are insane. And he just plucks it out of the air. Like, yeah, okay, that's where it was supposed to be. I got it. Don't worry. And so, yeah, I mean, last year, his foot gave up on him up on that crappy turf up in Carolina. And so he got out of there. He got out of there without it. So that's, with no injury. Hopefully that continues, because I enjoy seeing Mike. I think Mike being out in the field just gives this team so much confidence.
And man, he's just that guy, when it's that 3rd and long, or, like a 3rd and 6, Mike's going to come up with a first down for you. That reliable presence he has in the strong hands, exactly what you were just talking about before too. He comes through for you. And I'm just happy to see him getting, his due. Everybody was worried about what's this guy going to be like after missing, most of the last 3 years of football. And hopefully, fingers crossed, this dude can stay on track and healthy, because that's the only thing that's limiting him. The skill is obviously still there.
Well, and like you mentioned, like the 3rd and 6, whatever, he draws so much attention, right? And so, you see them be able to go over the top to Rashid Shaheed because he's in one-on-one coverage. They have no choice. They have to single him up. And it's because, that if they want to, they can go down to Mike and they can throw it to him in a phone booth, and he'll find a way to make that catch. And, it just makes life so much easier on everybody else. So, we had these conversations last year. We're talking about Jarvis and Mike and Olave, and the issue is they went up to Carolina and they came back, and both those guys, Jarvis and Mike, their feet fell off their legs. And so, yeah, I mean, the health is on their side right now, knock on wood. They did lose Jamal. Hopefully we'll find out more about that in the next few days. First injury report's coming out on Wednesday, but that's it for my stock up. And, as long as there's 6 players that are worthy of talking about stock up, there are guys I didn't mention that probably could be, that means the offense is doing that means this team is doing its job and finding ways to win. And I've really enjoyed these games. Have been ugly, but they've been a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun when you win these types of ugly games.
A little shout out to Blake Groupie. It wasn't anything difficult with his kicks, but still perfect on the air. Keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, just keeps getting the job done. And shout out to Bobby Hebert, who called the score of this game.
Yes, he
to
did.
The number. And then in his post game, he said, "I didn't know how it was going to go." Like he predicted the score. You clearly had some indicator. Anyway, I thought that was funny because I know even you said it. I listened to the rant, and he was like, "I didn't know I was going to go." I was like, "What are you talking about? You predicted the final score."
You had it down to the T.
Yeah. I'm in a pick'ems pool for this kind of website that they asked me to do. I went 4-1 this week. Saints got it for me, 2.5. The Rams had the weirdest cover in the world. They decided to kick a field goal to go down 7 as time expired. The line was 7.5. Covered that.
Oh man.
The only one I didn't get, I took the Giants -5.5, thinking they're going to bounce back, and they did. The second half of that game, they completely dominated and won, but I lost that bet because it was -5.5. But I went 4-1. We pick 5 games per week. I went 4-1, so I'm proud of that.
Betting with Jeff.
Yeah.
The next podcast.
Yeah, I think I also got the Chiefs and I got the Titans because I had a feeling the Titans. We watched the Titans last week. I didn't think the Titans were. They were big underdogs at home, and I was like, I think the Titans are a better team than they're getting credit for. I think people were down on the Titans this week because they lost to the Saints, and everyone went in down on the Saints. I'm like, well, if they can't beat the Saints, how are they going to beat the Chargers? And then they went and beat the Chargers. So, I mean, I think that's, if you're a fan of the transitive property.
Is Staley already on the hot seat over there?
They should. I mean, they must.
On it?
Sean Payton should be the coach of the Chargers. I mean, it's so.
He's even saying that.
Oh my God. They're both of them are, it's like that meme where the guy's walking and he's looking at the girl that looks the same as his girlfriend. They're both 0-2. And you see how that game ended, the Broncos game, with the insane Hail Mary and then the failed 2-point conversion on the PI that wasn't called.
That to me is that Sean Payton effect of the no call there at the end. I'm glad we don't have that anymore.
It just it feels like all of the negative vibes from that have kind of like been exercised, like the demon of like that's how the Saints would have lost the game. Anyway,
right, a Hail Mary at the end, and you just need the 2-point conversion. Oh, and you get pass interference, no call.
Yeah, in the officials' defense, if Russell Wilson throws an even reasonable pass, it's either a penalty or a catch. The reason that ref doesn't call that is because the ball is like way out here. Like that's a bad throw. Like if you make a good throw, that's either a successful 2-point conversion, or the guy has to foul him in such a way that it's impossible to miss. And so I put that on Russ. Like that's Washington. They blew like a 3-score lead in that game. So it's like you can blame the refs or you can blame the Broncos for being terrible. Anyway, this segment has drawn on forever, so let's close it out there. We're going to come back. We're going to talk some negatives. We're going to talk the guys that did disappoint me this week. We've already talked about a couple of them, but we'll get into it. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. We're talking about Saints 20, Panthers 17. Saints 2-0 for the first time since 2013. That is quite a while ago. Steve thinks he was in high school. That's how long ago it was, but he wasn't. He's actually gone senile.
I definitely gone senile. I got Dome Patrol stats on my brain. I don't know what happened there.
Got Dome Patrol stats. Anyway, this is Inside Black and Gold again. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. We enjoy bringing this to you. Give us a rating. Give us a review. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like to see. Schedule's been going to be a bit wonky this week, but we'll get back to it. Stick around. We're going to go through the 3 down, which is actually 5 down because I can't help myself. I have to take more than 3. So keep it locked for that. Who dat? Go. What are you doing down there?
just retweeting you, I finally looked at my ex. Not
never say that.
Re-X'd you. I can't
never.
even say
We still have the Twitter logo on here. I'm not. We're not. It's a bird.
Oh, that's right.
All right. Yeah, I'm not ever changing that. I'll delete the bird before I put an X there. Anyway. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. We went through the stock up segment. Now we're going to go through the stock down segment. We're going to close out with a mailbag. It's going to be a long show because we went a half hour on the stock up segment, but I was just so excited to talk about it. These players, I'm not quite as excited to talk about it. And it's tough. Week 2, I don't like trashing players. Guys struggle. The goal is they can get better. I'm not gonna bury anybody for their performance in week 2. I thought all in all, you had some really nice showings. But a guy who I think really did struggle, and it was an odd choice, I thought, going in, and he looked solid week 1. So I'm not gonna, you're learning. He is a rookie. It's Lou Hedley, the punter. You don't get a ton of chances to impact games as a punter, and in a lot of instances, the only thing you can do you can do is not screw up, right? Mm-hmm. Like you want to get them in the most reasonable starting field position you can without giving them an advantage. And in multiple cases in this game, Lou Hedley got the ball in a situation where he could have flipped the field and instead gave Carolina, a advantageous situation. The first punt of the game, he shanked it. The Panthers went down, kicked the field goal, got a 3-0 lead. Like that was the defense didn't sacrifice anything really. They allowed a long field goal attempt, but that's a score because they were put in an advantageous position. I think they started at their own 38 or something like that. And that's on the punter. Late in the game, he had a chance to pin them deep, and he kicked it through the end zone. And when you're that rugby-style punter, it's going to look awkward, and your entire game is kicking it out of bounds, kicking it inside the 20, but out of bounds, so there's no chance for a return. And you're deciding what their field position is based on where it goes out of bounds. Well, in that case, he just bops it in the end zone. They get the ball at the 20. And I think they went down and kicked a field goal on that possession. It set them up for a long drive. And, you made the decision to not go with Gillikin, to go with the rookie. I think he's going through some growing pains right now. Thankfully, it didn't cost you ultimately in this game. He's got to be better.
You mentioned it too when talking about that punt. I think both resulted. The shanks ended up in points for the Panthers, but man, oh man, the defense still did their job for the black and gold. The Panthers kicker, Pinheiro, 2 kicks over 50+ yards. That was pretty impressive from him. I was like, damn, that guy was booming them.
Yeah, he doesn't miss. I think we were talking about this on the broadcast. The Saints, it feels like they haven't had an opponent miss a kick in forever. It's because they haven't. The last kick that was missed against them in a game was against the Steelers last year.
Wow.
Every kick attempted since that point has gone through against the Saints. And so, and that includes like Nick Folk last week, a guy who showed up, at the end of camp, went 5 for 5. I don't know what it is. The kickers gain superpowers when they go up against the Saints. But yeah.
Yeah. But overall for Hedley, we're just hoping to see some improved play coming down the stretch because he won't last long if those keep happening to shorten the field for the opponent for sure.
Yeah, no, you got to be better than that, and I think he will be, right. Like people are gonna overreact because it does look a little awkward, but that's kind of the style. It's not gonna look pretty. Darren Rizzi talked about that. Like you're gonna see it, and it's gonna look weird. I had someone tell me he's holding the ball too long, and no, that's actually part of the. One of the reasons you see them hold the ball and they kind of extend a little bit is because with that style you're not getting as much hang time, right? But so you kind of make up the gap there by holding it for maybe a split second longer, maybe taking a step to the left or right, and that gives your coverage that extra time to get down that they might be losing in the hang time. So yeah, it's a whole thing, but I think he'll get better. Again, he's a rookie. He's 30, but he is a rookie, and you just either way, he's the stock down guy. You had to pick somebody, so that's him. The next guy on this list, and I try to pick someone from all phases when I can. Like I don't want to be too harsh on either side of the ball with these. And there is one guy on defense. I thought
say it's going to be hard for defense.
Well, it is, but it's also like in a lot of these instances, before I have the benefit of going over film, it's usually the guy who frustrates me the most in the game that gets the criticism from me. And in this case, it's a guy who, it's for a familiar reason. It's Paulson Adebo. And it's because, well, I think he's been really good, and he's a very good cover corner. He's very physical. He's gotten the job done. He was my pick on the outside the whole way. Like, I was confident in him, and I'm still confident in him. But he has a really bad habit of getting penalties at the wrong time. 3rd and 10. You cannot be holding. Make the guy beat you. Like, even if he's going to beat you out of the break, force Bryce Young to make that throw. And if you did that, if you just kept your hands off of him, that's a strip sack, fumble. Saints, and that's a put away type turnover at that point in the game. Instead, it's this really just dumb holding penalty. I think he had the Saints didn't get a lot of penalties in that game.
No, that was great, right?
He only had 3, but 2 of them were on Paulson Adebo. We had a pass interference later in the game that extended the drive, and like those are the plays that I need to stop happening, especially in moments like that. 3rd and 10, you can't give up a 5-yard penalty for a first down. If he's gonna hit that guy on a comeback route for 10 yards for a first down, fine, you live with it. You can't make it automatic, and so that's. That's my nitpicking on the defense. They were really good. I thought Paulson had a pretty good day overall. But those moments have to stop because we saw it last year. We saw him give up that horrible pass interference to Mike Evans that really set up the Bucs at the goal line, and they ended up winning that game. It's something that has cropped up with him at inopportune times. And so he's on this list for me today.
I definitely understand, nothing against Paulson, obviously, but yeah, the untimely penalty is not great. Like you said, a 3rd and 10 situation, you got to get off the damn field. And that was a situation where you were getting a turnover that ended up
Panthers
getting
territory. Yeah.
And like that's a kill shot. Like, you mentioned that too. At least though, that wasn't Paulson's only statistics of the game, unlike the other person who was penalized this matchup.
Yeah. So I know who you're talking about. And he's not on my stock down, but he is in my dishonorable mention category. And so we'll skip the last stock down guy and go to that because you talked about it. Jimmy Graham, if your only impact on the game is a holding penalty, that's bad. And I've heard there's a vision for Jimmy. So far, I don't know what it is. And you're looking at a team that decided to go into this game with 2 running backs and 3 tight ends, not including Taysom Hill, because my dog just sneezes as she's sleeping on her back. She's got her head up against the pillow. It's very funny. I'm sorry. At a certain point, it's like, why is Jimmy Graham active? And it's like, would you not have been better served with Kirk Merritt? And the only impact he had on the game, I think he had 10 snaps and then that one hold. I like Jimmy Graham. I'd love to see him catch a touchdown at the Superdome. That would be fantastic. But is he just around as a novelty? Because at a certain point, it's working against you. Yeah.
I don't think there's any issues, obviously, with health-wise, or else he wouldn't have been active. Looking to anything that happened way back in LA during those joint practices with the Chargers. But I think we're pretty much past that, at least health-wise. I know legal issues too, but man, what the team in the red zone just not getting anything like even attempted to him kind of seems just wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the offense didn't really do a ton in the first half to merit it, and you had these big plays and you ran the ball well, and in the second half, and I just think, like, at a certain point I don't think you cut him, but at a certain point is he not on that inactive list, right? I think you need more than 2 running backs active, and you saw in this game why, because running backs get hurt, and if you're sacrificing that 3rd running back and a guy who is useful in Kirk Merritt, he plays special teams. He is a guy that makes sense to have active, and just to have an extra tight end, that's a stock down for me for sure in that dishonorable mention category.
Yeah, definitely hoping we see something from Jimmy, because right now he has really just felt kind of ornamental.
It's a good word, ornamental. It's what it feels like. And I mean, he is a leader. Like that's not for nothing. But yeah. So let's go back. So the last stock down player. So this is actually the third stock down player, and Jimmy's in that kind of secondary list. It's Derek Carr.
Yeah,
and it's harsh. I think he has showed up late in the game in moments where you need to go win a game, and he's gone and won them. But there's a point where these interceptions late in the first half are inexcusable. And in a tight game like that, he needs to go buy Carl like a watch or something, because Carl Granderson saved them 3 points. They didn't end up scoring, which they got the ball in prime position to potentially score before the half because of that strip fumble by Carl. But Derek Carr, Carl saved him from a horrible interception that would have at minimum been 3 points, if not for that turnover, maybe more. And that's 2 weeks in a row we've seen it. And while he'll take it on the chin and talk about it like that, and that's fine. Again, that's what he should do. And he's not wrong. They were terrible interceptions. You got to be better than that. And I did appreciate what he said about the defense in his post game. And let's listen to that.
In this early part of the season, I think a couple people said that was part of the reason you wanted to come here.
Yes, that's a very big part of the reason. Any team that I talked to was a team with a defense. And when I played these guys, I knew DA. I know what it's like and how difficult it is, and all I want to do is win. And so I was like, shoot, if I can go there and have a day like today, didn't play my best in the first half, come back, play good in the second half, and win a game. Like, I didn't have to be perfect for 4 quarters, and we won. Like that is awesome. I don't like that. Still, we won, but it's still sick because I should have played better. I can help the offense more. I can do. You sit back and I'm already analyzing it, right? But to have that defense to hold us, keep us in there until we got clicking in the second half, I mean, it helped us. It helped us win the football game.
What happened on that interception? What did you see?
Well, I saw him coming down. I saw Chris going behind him, and when I saw him step down, I didn't even. It was a terrible read. I knew he didn't have anything affecting him. I should have known he was going to get back there. I saw Chris. I threw it. As soon as I threw it, I was like, "You idiot!" Like that. It was terrible. It was my fault all the way.
Yeah, and so we talked about this. That was one of the big talking points of Derek Carr coming to the Saints is, why has Derek Carr not had success throughout his career? Well, he's never played with a top 10 defense even. And so how do things work when he does? And so, that's what he wanted. He wanted to play with a good defense because there were going to be moments where you don't play well. And it's nice when you can have one of the worst halves you've had in a while and still going with a 6-3 lead. And that's what happened in that game is they got to halftime and he knew he could play better. But still doing that with a lead. And so, I appreciate the honesty from him. I do think he's going to get better. I think the protection is going to get better. The killer instinct is something, the ability to just clutch up and go win a game is invaluable in my opinion. It's where the stat heads kind of miss when you're talking about quarterback play. It's like you can say, there's not a huge difference between him and Andy Dalton. The way those games ended is the difference. But what I need is for him to show up earlier in the game. I would love a blowout win at some point this season. That would be nice.
Now you're just asking too much.
Yeah. But no, so he's in my stock down, not because I'm out on him, but because, he's disappointed me in the first half of both of these games. And I think sorry,
bless you.
That came out of nowhere. And I think he can be better is basically what I'm saying.
No, and the pick that he had, it was one of those you had to double check. Was like, wait a minute, did Jameis Winston go out there because it kind of looked like God's plan?
Come on,
like, what are you doing?
No, I don't. Why hitting Jameis with strays? All he's doing is sitting there and being like, yeah, yes.
That's now become like a meme everywhere.
No, that's not fair to Jameis. When Jameis was in there, he did not make throws like that. That's the thing. He did make one throw like that against the Panthers. Actually, and that was week 2 in 2021. It was before the half. He just made one of these YOLO throws and it got intercepted. It was similar, but I think one of the qualities that Jameis had when he was out there was not throwing these terrible interceptions in his own territory. So I don't think that's fair. But Derek's got to be better than that.
It was just reminding me of, just go up and hopefully he gets it kind of thing in triple coverage.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. Yeah, and like the spot Jameis threw a couple interceptions with the Saints, and I think one of the reasons I didn't hate them was because you're in shot play territory. The Bucs game last year, you're at about the 50-yard line. He's going deep to Chris Olave because it's like, okay, worst case scenario, it gets intercepted and they get it at the 20. In this case, it's like you can't make that type of throw in your own territory in a 6-3 game. And so, yeah, I mean, and Derek's not, he's not shying away from that. It's like, it was terrible. He said that himself. And so, like I fully expect to have him in the stock up category next week. But right now he's been disappointing, I think.
No, and the best part of it was the way you closed the game, obviously. Yeah, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. All right, you mucked it up and had a terrible first half, but you didn't let that get to you and still made some key throws down the stretch, which obviously vital for the team. And man, we keep seeing, that Shaheed and connection late seems to be pretty money.
I love Rashid so much. He's one of my favorite players to watch and to talk to. And he's just fantastic. So it's great to see that. The last one I'll say on the dishonorable mention side is the offensive line. Again, I'm not going to single anybody out until I'm able to go through the film. But you look at that interior, and it's like, man, we can talk about Trevor Penning, and we could say like, man, Trevor's got to get better. I expected Trevor to have some struggles. I did not expect Cesar Ruiz, James Hurst, Eric McCoy, these guys to be a sieve at this point in the season. That's what they've been. And at a certain point, you're going to end up facing offensive lines that are not as talented as the Titans and the Panthers, who I think are probably 2 top 5 defensive fronts. But you got to get better, and that's got to start soon.
Yeah, I just have the image of Ruiz like getting run over in my brain still. I have to watch things over again too, and I think you're right. You can't pinpoint it on any specific one person. It's still the unit as a whole for sure.
And I mean, the Panthers are tough. The Panthers are on a lot of games and stunts. So do the Titans up front. That you got to communicate well. And I think that's been a big part. Is there hasn't been the communication you need. But I expect it to get better. My nose.
You talk about the Panthers. I found out about the name Frankie Lavu yesterday. Game day. I was like, the guy was everywhere.
Luvu, yeah, he got through a couple times. The Panthers are a good front, so you're going to give up sacks. I think it's a good thing that, I get more concerned about the protection when it gets worse throughout the course of a game. Because you're going to have these plays that you're not familiar with. The defense might catch you with a stunt that you just were not prepared for, and you get a free rusher. If that's happening in the second half, like if you look good to start a game and you get figured out and they find stuff that works against you and they just start hammering you with it, that's a bigger issue to me than, okay, they got you in the first half, then you came back and you found ways to counter it and you were able to get stuff going. That's what good teams do. And I think that's what the Saints have been able to do in spurts late in the games. And so there's some positivity there. But if you want breakdowns of offensive line stuff, go check out Deuce Wyndham on Twitter. He's been breaking down all the Trevor Penning. He has a video up there right now where he broke down all the sacks and all on both sides. And he does a great job. So check his stuff out. I think his podcast is called Who Dat Confessional. It's really good. He does the film breakdowns where he's sitting in the corner, which I've always been jealous of because I don't have that type of green screen ability in my life. I do have a green screen, but I'm not good at it. But yeah, so if you are interested in the offensive line breakdowns, because I don't pretend to be an offensive line expert, I don't know what I don't know, right? But he does actually know his stuff. So
I laugh at everybody on social media that is talking about Trevor Penning's footwork.
Yeah, everyone's an expert. Someone was like, I played football before you were born, and I was like, cool. So did everyone who played football before I was born. That doesn't make you an expert. That just means you were alive. It means you're old. Anyway. But all right, let's wrap this segment up. We're going to come back. We're going to hit a mailbag. If you haven't got your questions in there, make sure to do that. My dog is trying to dig a hole in the bed she's laying on, and I'm sorry. It's distracting. But yeah, so we're going to come back. We're going to dive into some questions. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. We're coming at you after the Saints 20-17 victory over the Panthers. That was a little bit more dominant than that score might make it sound. Saints defense has just been remarkable, and we're going to talk more about that. Keep it locked on Inside Black and Gold. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Okay, come on. The dog wants to go for a walk. She's going to have to wait. Say hi.
She is the sole reason the Saints are 2-0.
Yes. Go Taysom. Taysom Hill fan. Number 1 fan. All right, go ahead. Go away. All right.
I need attention.
Yes. Well, in her defense, she usually gets a walk by now, so she'll figure it out.
Hopefully not on your floor.
Nah, she's good. I can't remember what I was saying. This is Inside Black and Gold. We're going to be going through the Saints mailbag. I got a bunch of questions starred in here. There's a lot of them, but if you want to drop your questions in at the back end, I'll try to get to as many as possible. First one, thanks for that, Tim. Says, why is Derek not seeing when it comes to our wide receivers, or is this just growing pains? I think, he's talked a lot about this, and I think there is some timing that they're trying to work out. And early in the game, especially when, you've seen in the first half of these games, the offensive line has not given him a lot of time to operate, gets a little happy feet, and then he's going a little too fast. Both he and Rashid Shaheed mentioned this. I think everyone was going a little too fast in that first half. They were rushing things. They weren't being patient enough. And you saw the results. There were some plays. There was a throw to Chris Olave that Chris was open. He was going out in a 7, and the ball just sailed. It just didn't get where it needed to go. And I think those are the types of things that, I think they are seeing the right things. They're just not always clicking. And I think later in the game, you get that. I think we took that for granted with Drew over the years, that he always seemed on time and on target with these throws, and he understood where guys were supposed to be and what time they were going to be there. And, for now, I think you just kind of have to accept that it's not going to be perfect every week, but, it's going to get better.
And I think we'll hopefully see it get better with an improved run game too, obviously.
I agree. Here's one here. That's scout without clout. It says it doesn't take a former offensive lineman to see Penning has unrefined footwork, leverage, etc. See, and this is going back to the comment I made about, like there's a lot of offensive line footwork experts on Twitter these days. And I agree with you. Like, I don't think, like, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I can tell his footwork is unrefined and he's not doing everything perfectly. His leverage isn't right. He has his hips too far back over his, he's on his heels and he's getting driven off the ball at times. He's not taking the right angles to cut off these wide sets. Those are the things that he needs to work on. My issue is there's a lot of people who are saying he doesn't have the ability to improve that footwork. Like, they can see from these reps that he does not have the athleticism to be able to improve in that regard. And that's the part where it's like, that's nonsense. Like, his athleticism is off the charts. He's got to get better. And so that's where I kind of come in with that, where it's like, yeah, I think anyone can see in week 1 that he was struggling with his footwork, that things didn't look right. They didn't look confident, but the culprits are what I want. I don't need people to tell me he's like, he was bad. I know he was bad, but pretending that you know exactly what's going on in the guy's head, what he was supposed to be doing, where he was supposed to be. That's the part that it's like, you talk to people on Twitter and they'll be like, no. I called this play. What are you talking about? I've been coaching him all off season. I know what he is. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
We just definitely need to see the offense being able to finish, especially early on. To me, obviously, you look at the numbers from last game, and just as a whole, the offense wasn't able to put the Panthers away, and they should have been able to early on.
Agreed. So Ransom Antoine here. This was an early question, so I don't know if he's still hanging around, but thank you for the question. It says, besides the offensive line, what do you think this offense is missing? And, I think it's missing Alvin Kamara. I mean, well, again, and I was harping on this at halftime. If you follow me on Twitter, I think I sent out at least 3 or 4 tweets in all caps. Like, you have to run the ball. Just because Alvin's not there, you lose Jamal Williams. You cannot sacrifice that part of the game plan and allow Brian Burns and Derek Brown.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what do you think?
You can't allow these talented offensive linemen to pin their ears back and just constantly be coming at you. You need to slow them down in some way. And even if the run game isn't ripping off big gains, and you have to trust Tony Jones Jr., who did not put the ball on the ground, kept it secure. I think that's one of your concerns is that, and then pass protection. I think he did an excellent job. It's one of the reasons he was one of my stock up players. But you could not establish the ground game against the Titans. You could not establish the ground game in the first half against the Panthers. You were able to in the second half, and I think what you saw is everything got a lot easier when you were able to keep defenses honest. And, when you get Alvin back, that'll be a lot easier, and you won't have as many questions about how many snaps you really want to give Tony Jones Jr., how much can you trust him with the playbook. You're going to get Alvin coming in hungry, coming in at a shot out of a cannon. To me, that's what that will make life so much easier on this offensive line in general, and on this offense in general.
Yeah, we're definitely missing the run game, and Alvin is definitely that. We saw a little bit of him in preseason game number 1 of the Chiefs, and I think he was averaging over 4 yards a carry in that game, and we haven't seen that kind of output from any other running back on this team, though.
Rich Vital says Kareem Hunt would have been a perfect standing for Kamara. Jamal Williams is not the right style for this team. Well, so I disagree with the Jamal Williams is not the right style for this team, because Jamal Williams paired with Alvin Kamara,
yes,
makes a ton of sense. Jamal Williams as the RB1 is tough, and we've seen kind of the limitations there. Kareem Hunt never signed anywhere, right? So this idea that they should have gone and got him, clearly something happened in that physical with the Colts that has scared some teams off. So, it's not like there's people like if they want him, they can still go get him. There's clearly some issues there. So I don't think it's I don't think he's on the table.
No, and to me, I thought it was a money issue. Him wanting whatever number that these teams aren't willing to pony up.
No, because if that was the case, he would have signed with the Colts. There was a physical issue.
A health thing?
Yeah. He would be signed somewhere if it wasn't a health thing.
I guess we'll find out soon enough. The Browns might call him back up.
That's true. Yeah, right. He should have stayed on the Browns. This would have been his year if he had stayed with the Browns.
Right.
Yeah. Here's 992 RAS. You should never think the play is over, no matter what. Well, I assure you that the coaches are like, Chris, this was one of the best catches I've ever seen. What the hell were you thinking?
Oh, man.
And it was so quick.
What made it so worse for me and why I was that heavily invested, obviously because it's the Saints, but I have Olave on my fantasy team, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, so I tweeted the picture of him stepping on the sideline, and you I had at least 7 replies of the people showing me the score, how they lost by 0.2 and 0.6 because that play got overturned. Because either they had Derek Carr or Olave, because Tony Jones ended up taking that touchdown. Yeah, that's that's if you want to be critical of Chris Olave, the sideline awareness there could be better. But don't spike the ball, man. Don't spike the ball unless you're in the end zone.
For whatever reason, obviously he thought he was down.
But even if he was down, and I think this is what the coaches are going to tell him, I'm pretty sure that if you had an officiating crew that was a little more, in its own head, you could have flagged that for unsportsmanlike conduct. You're supposed to get up and hand the ball to the ref. Spiking it in the field of play, you could say that's a delay a game or whatever. That's not what you're supposed to do. And so the refs didn't give him a flag there, but they probably could have. And you would really have no argument because it was a foolish thing to do. It was just, he was in it. That's an incredible catch. He made it. Guy, you gotta be smarter than that. But yeah, it was definitely not a great it was an incredible moment by him, followed by one of the dumber things I've seen on a football field.
And we said earlier on too, the bounces right now are going our way. Let's keep it going that way too.
Agreed. Yeah, the fact that it bounced out of bounds, good for him. There was one more here from the same character. That is true. I said that Taysom didn't break any runs. He technically did, and this comment points that out. With that last run he had, he went down. He probably could have scored, but he slid. He did the team first thing.
Yeah.
Which I was rooting for him. He should have just gone in and scored. I think that would have been more fun. But yeah, he did the smart thing. He did the thing that's going to get praised in the film review right after Chris Olave gets raked over the coals a little bit for the boneheaded spike there.
What's good is obviously it didn't hurt the Saints. Teachable moment, and I'm sure Olave won't do that again now.
Yeah, and I'm sure Taysom will continue to do that. Because if you remember, if you go back to the Jets game 2021, I believe, that was one of his starts. Late in the game, the Jets basically just allowed him to run for like a 40, 50-yard touchdown. And it was like he could have gone down and ended the game, and instead he just kind of kept running and scored a touchdown. And I think that's kind of like, I'm sure after that game, he heard about that, and he was just like, yeah, okay, fine, you're right. And so now, he kind of, it's kind of a funny thing, but you give him credit there for being aware of it. It's Tim Fagbenro says the hope is to use Olave and Alvin in motion, and yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when you get Alvin back, you're going to have a lot more options in your offense, no question about it.
One more game.
One more game. Just kind of sitting here waiting, like it's going to happen. It's going to happen. He's going to get there. He's going to get there. Here's one with Scout Without Clout that I think is a good question. Is if Andy Dalton had started that game, would the result have been different? And I said this going into the season. If the Panthers were serious about winning this year, Andy Dalton would be their starting quarterback, and it has nothing to do with Bryce Young. It has everything to do with rookie quarterbacks are not ready to win right away, and they decided to get Bryce Young the experience and get him out there. And, he's going to get the trial by fire thing. But, go through the history of the NFL. There are very, very slim number of quarterbacks that started immediately as a rookie and had immediate success. Even guys like Joe Burrow, who have had a ton of success. He struggled his rookie season and then he got hurt. Pat Mahomes didn't start as a rookie. Aaron Rodgers didn't start as a rookie. Tom Brady didn't start until the end of his rookie season. Eli Manning did not start until late into his rookie season. Peyton Manning started right away and had one of the worst rookie seasons you'll see from a guy who went on to be a Hall of Famer. Kyler Murray had a good rookie season. And Kyler Murray's probably a good example of someone who's like, yeah, he was good as a rookie. They still lost a ton of games, right? Anthony Richardson and the Colts are going to lose a ton of games this year. CJ Stroud and the Texans are going to lose a ton of games this year. It's just what happens. So I don't know if they win that game with Andy Dalton, but they have a better chance with Andy Dalton in there, especially with Andy knowing what he knows about the Saints defense. I think I was way more concerned going into this year thinking Andy would be the starter. And then they put Bryce Young in there as the starter. And I immediately was like, okay, pencil in a win, because it was always going to go that way.
What was Carolina doing with those odd packages where they brought Dalton in for what, a handoff?
I think they don't want to run Bryce Young on quarterback sneaks because he's so small. I genuinely think that's what it is. They don't want to get hurt. Which is strange.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on?
Well, and so Deuce on the broadcast made a really good point. So that first time they brought him in, there was a false start. And, when you're an offensive lineman, you're going off the voice. You're going off the sound of the quarterback calling the snap count. And suddenly, after an entire game of hearing Bryce Young, you're hearing a different voice. And it's, I think that's probably what happened there. And they just got the cadence wrong and they false started. And instead of a, 4th and goal or 4th and short, you had 4th and 6, and they ended up, I believe, kicking a field goal. But yeah, that was strange because it's not like a Taysom Hill, like Andy Dalton. No one's going to accuse him of being a premier athlete at the quarterback position. It was odd. But that's the only thing that made sense to me is, Bryce Young is like 5'10", 190 pounds, soaking wet. And you're just like, yeah, I don't want to see him get crunched in the line there.
That does make sense then if you're thinking about using him for the sneak for sure.
Yeah. But then they didn't. He handed the ball off.
Right.
So
maybe because it was like, oh, you think he's going to sneak it and we're going to try and be cute.
Yeah, it's like rock, paper, scissors, where it's like, I want to throw rock, but he knows I like rocks. So I'm going to throw scissors, but then it's like, damn it. And, I overthought it because he threw paper. Anyway, That didn't work. But you get the idea. Yeah, I think or the Princess Bride. Have you seen the Princess Bride?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Where he's talking about the wine, and he was like, "Oh, but you knew that I would know that you were doing that, so obviously it's in your cup. But you knew that I was smarter than you, and so you thought that I would know that it's in my cup. So now it's in anyway." And it was in both cups because they failed either way.
Right.
You got it. Anyway, yeah, no, I think it's a good question because again, I think if you're the Panthers and you had a serious idea that you're going to win this division, yeah, you would have gone with Andy Dalton to at least start the season, right? Like, I think that's if I'm a GM, and you don't always have that luxury when you trade up to the number one pick, and there's a lot of pressure to get this guy on the field right away. But I've always felt like the way the Giants did it with Eli, right? He was the number one overall pick, but they had Kurt Warner, and they played Kurt Warner until the season was effectively over, like until they really didn't have a chance, and then they put him in there without pressure to get better. Right, without the idea that me losing these games for my team is losing us this season, and I think that's not helpful to a quarterback's confidence. You're just teaching them to get comfortable losing, and I don't like it. And I think the Panthers are making a mistake.
I was definitely, when they made that announcement very early too, that they were going with him to start the season. It was like, all right, then I thought for sure too, you ease him into it and let Andy take over, and I was kind of worried facing Dalton on Monday Night Football, even though he is primetime Andy.
Yeah, right. Here's another one from Scout Without Clout. We talked about that Adebo penalty. He says that forced fumble was a really odd call. I didn't see the replay on the broadcast. Flag seemed really late. I did see the replay. It was it was a hold. It was a bad call. It was a bad play by Paulson. But it was a hold. He gets... he gets kind of leaning the wrong way at the top of the route, and just grabs him as he's trying to work his way back. But that's what's frustrating to me is if he's not trying to beat you over the top, there's no excuse to hold there, right? Like if you're trying to avoid what could be a 80-yard touchdown or whatever, then you hold or you do whatever you got to do. If he's working back to the quarterback and you're just trying to stop him from getting an 8 to 10-yard gain, you got to let him do it. But it was the right call. It was a bad hold, and that's why I'm a little critical of Paulson today.
Yeah, in an unfortunate situation, obviously, when it occurs too in a prime time to get the ball back.
Agreed. So Rich Vital brings this up. How about that ghost tackle by May? That was one of the more fascinating out-of-body moments I've seen in the NFL.
Yeah, but see, to me, it's like I believe that he thought Bryce was going to slide. He didn't, and he didn't want to get flagged.
I'm sure that's what he would say. And I think, the reason that happens is because quarterbacks get all the protection in the world. And even when they're runners, you never know. And yes, I think that he expected Bryce to kind of take that last second slide or do something. And it's like, you can say that they're a runner and they don't get the protections. He's 5'8", whatever you want to say. He's tiny. If Marcus May lights him up and puts him into the dirt, he is getting a flag, 100%. He's also probably getting a $30,000 fine in the mail. So I think all of those things are going on in Marcus May's head all at that moment, and he just freezes. He's like, how do I tackle this guy? I don't know how. How am I supposed to tackle this guy in a way that will not get me in trouble? Do I have a pillow that I can put down and lay him comfortably on? And he was like, oh no, I left it at home. Crap, how am I supposed to tackle him now? And yeah, so it's not a great moment by Marcus. But again, it's like there's that scenario 100 times where you could see that tackle made and still get a flag. So, and then it's 15 yards on top of that. And yeah, it's definitely not his brightest moment. But I actually think Marcus has played reasonably well this season. I think, the back end of the defense has not been talked about a lot. And that's because it's been playing very well. And, there's really no explosive plays to speak of in either of these games.
The big question, was a joke for a while. What is a catch? I don't even know anymore in the NFL. Well, you know what? You see tackles that are getting flagged. Well, penalties that coming out on just tackles that it's a nice hit on a quarterback and it's getting ridiculously called. So that to me in that scenario is what happened. I was going through that process with Marcus May too, so I felt it.
Here's educated guess. Says Carr made a lot of big passes last night. It was overshadowed by the interception and a lot of bad play calls in the red zone. The red zone passing routes are not disruptive. No flat routes are that. I mean, I agree. Carr made some nice throws in the second half of that game, but even by his own admission, he was rushing things in the first half. He was not playing well, and that's where it's like there's going to be a point where that's going to cost you a game. Because you're going to face better offenses. You're going to face more dynamic offenses at some point this season. I don't know when it's going to be. But the Falcons are going to want to run the ball down your throat. And can you win a game where they're controlling the ball? And can you get stuff going in the first half, right? They're going to face a lot of solid defenses, and he's got to show up. And, this is a team that expects to be in the postseason. You can't win a playoff game the way you won that game yesterday. So you need to see that improve as the season goes on. And while I think the criticism of Carr shouldn't be overshadowed by the fact that he made a dumb interception 2 weeks in a row, but it can't be ignored. I mean, that's the type of throw you can't make. That's the type of throw that can cost you a game.
Things are going to get pretty ugly soon if the Saints don't get more efficient with the offense getting into the end zone, especially once they do get and red zone territory. Forget the criticism of Carr. There's going to be a lot of heat on Pete Carmichael too, obviously.
Agreed. So we got a compliment from Marco Hernandez. Says sweet Super Bowl hat hanging up, Steve. And
thank you.
Got a lot going on here with the pennant, and a lot of these are free. There's a pennant I got from the Superdome. They gave it to me. The Dome Patrol poster I got from the Superdome. They gave it away. And I just put it on the wall. So the Mardi Gras beads, that's from the Pelicans. The Funko Pop is mine, but the King Cake Baby is from the Pelicans. So yeah, I like to crowdsource my swag.
King Cake Baby wards off evil spirits too, because they're frightened of him for sure.
It's also broken. My dog knocked it down, or my cat knocked it down, so it's super glued in there. It's not standing on its own two legs anymore. And that's actually so. The thing it's in
that King Cake Baby's broken.
So it's in the crown. It's standing in the crown. Let's see. And that's actually the crown from the Julius Randle bobblehead giveaway, because I have all these bobbleheads, but my cats jump up on there and knock them off. So the Julius Randle one it's in pieces, it's gone. And so I took the King Cake Baby, which is also broken, and glued it inside the Julius Randle crown. And that's where it is. Anyway.
It works.
Yeah. I know everyone needed that information. All right. So last one, T. Deasley. That wasn't a nice throw, that 45-yarder to Shaheed in the fourth quarter. It was an absolute laser beam, and it was a nice throw. And Carr said it, and he's like, I rifled that ball. And, I think that's a situation where it's like, can you overthrow a guy? Because I'm not sure you can overthrow Rashid Shaheed. He's going to go get it. And it's really the only thing you can do wrong. And we saw this earlier in the offseason, right? Earlier in camp, we saw, I think it might have been Jameis and Derek may have had one of these, where it's they were throwing deep to Shaheed and he had to slow down and come back for it because they underestimated just how fast he was. And it's and Bobby's talked about this. I can't remember who the player was, but it was there's no timing there. I'm throwing it as far as I can because I know that the only thing I can do wrong is throw it to the point that he has to slow down so that guy can catch up, because I know that he can go get it and that guy can't. And so I think that's what Derek Carr did well on that throw, is he didn't force Shaheed to break stride at all. He forced Shaheed to go faster and go get it. And he has that extra gear. And we've seen it 2 weeks in a row, and I love it. That's a very, when you can force defenses to have to cover you deep late in a game when they think you're going to run, then you can actually run it. And so, yeah, the connection there is fantastic. And it's going to make things a lot easier.
A little bit going a touch on the down segment. Could have included maybe a Juwan Johnson, just for the fact I thought he'd be involved a little bit more right now. But man, that lethal combo, that trio of Saints wide receivers is hell of impressive right now. Loving Olave, Shaheed, and Thomas. I think they're going to, continue to do great things on the year. But the tight end spot, I guess, still a question. We saw Foster, make some nice
got a couple catches, yeah.
But Juwan, I thought would be involved a little more at this point. Maybe it's something that's still to come, because there's certainly not for a lack of ability there from him.
Well, what I'll say for the tight end position in general, so Juwan played 62 snaps in that game. He was on the field pretty much the entire game, but he wasn't really targeted in the passing game. And I think what you're seeing these first 2 weeks is the offensive line is struggling. And so what do you do when the offensive line struggles? Well, you got to keep extra bodies in to block, and you got to keep the tight ends in to help chip. And that limits what you can do splitting Juwan out in the passing game, having him line up in the slot and run downfield, because it doesn't matter if he gets open downfield if Derek Carr is on his back. And so I think that's a big piece of what's happening with the tight end room right now, and the lack of production is you need them in to block. And so they're not running as many routes as you'd like them to. And when they are running routes, those are the plays where Derek Carr is running for his life. So I think they'll get better, right? I think as the offensive line gets better, you can get a little bit more aggressive with the tight ends. But it's a position that when you need them to block, they got to block. And so that's why I don't want to put him in the down category, because I don't think he's doing anything tangibly wrong. I think that's just when your offensive line is struggling, that's the position that gets limited. The tight ends and the running backs in the passing game. When your offensive line is struggling, that's directly what it's taking away from, is the ability to get downfield with your tight ends and your running backs.
It totally makes sense when you mentioned, obviously, all the snaps he was involved in. I just wasn't sure, because it seemed like he was just MIA on Monday night. Sorry.
Yeah, no, he was there, right? When I saw the snap counts this morning, I was stunned, because I would have assumed that he was only in for like 30, 40 snaps. But no, He was in there basically the entire game. I think he had only Chris Olave had more offensive snaps than him, independent of offensive linemen and quarterbacks who were on the field basically the entire game. And then Mike Thomas, 60 snaps, which to me, it's like, if you had any questions about their ideas of his durability right now, he's on there. He's out there 60 plays, and I think they only ran something like 82. So it's like 90% of the snaps. And I think both those guys, they're part of what they do well is block. And so that's why they're out there a lot.
Yeah, see, that was something for Juwan, though, too, that was a knock on him in that switch to tight end, was his need to improve the blocking. So obviously they're confident that that's at least gotten to a point they can rely on him to hang back.
So that's good. But I think there's going to be a game before long where we see that vintage Juwan Johnson. But to get there, you need the offensive line. But all right, let's wrap this up. Been going for about 90 minutes here. I think we've gotten to a lot of good content. Thanks everyone who dropped in a question. I don't think we got to them all, but we got to a lot of them. And, I appreciate everyone who's in here every week. I do enjoy doing these live chats. We need to start doing more of them. Hopefully, as the schedule kind of gets more normalized, we won't have a Monday night game the rest of the way. We have a couple Thursday night games. That's going to be kind of weird, but hopefully we can start doing a more regular live chat. What's up, Steve?
They're not doing flexing Monday night games this year, huh? Or are they?
I don't think they're flexing Monday night games, but they're flexing Sundays.
Okay. I didn't know.
So, like, theoretically, the Saints could get flexed into a Sunday spot.
Right.
But the way they're played, the way these games have gone, I don't think anyone's clamoring to get them on national television with these kind of rock fight games.
I think I've mentioned it before. We've talked about it definitely, though, at some point. That last game of the season against Atlanta could very well be. You never know what could happen. NFC South on the line. They might be attracted to that.
I mean, right now it's they're going to be a 15-1 team against a 15-1 team, or a 16-0 team.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The
one
NFC
team's got
South,
to win the first game.
The strength of the NFC, like everyone saw it.
Yep, everyone saw it coming. 2-0 teams in the NFC South, and Baker Mayfield's Bucks are one of them.
Ugh.
The only team that hasn't won a game is the team with the number 1 overall pick. Right. Tanking works. Anyway.
So, this week coming up, obviously Sunday, headed to Green Bay, and then boom, it'll be back to see those Tampa Bay Buccaneers led by Baker.
In the dome. It feels like I haven't been in the dome in a month because I wasn't out there for week 1. And like the last time I was out there was the Texans game. It's been a while. But all right, let's wrap this up. This is Inside Black and Gold. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow Steve at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. Check out WWL.com for the latest Saints content, news, notes, and analysis. We got a 3 up, 3 down, which we went through on this show. So if you want to go check out the text version of that with all the write-ups, it's on WWL.com. We got Bobby Hebert's rant up there if you want to check it out. And, as always, just thanks everyone for listening. If you have anyone who's looking for a Saints podcast, send it along. That's all we ask. We don't charge for this podcast. All I ask is you to be like, hey, you like the Saints. Why don't you listen to this? Right. I think, I don't think it's asking too much. Right. I think that's fair. Right, Steve?
I would definitely recommend it highly. We are here to bring you the latest and greatest from a team. It was a rough go to start last year, but at least we're, getting into the more positive flow this season. It already feels so much different.
God, it's so nice to talk about a team that won a couple of games.
Yes.
Last year was a slog the whole way. But all right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Who dat? Go Saints.